concludes questions to the First Minister. We now move on to questions to the Infrastructure Minister, and I call Mr Justin McNulty. Minister.
Provided NI Water with nearly £500 million of public money this year to enable it to deliver essential water and sewage services for all areas, including Newry. NI Water has developed a strategic outline case to access the options for upgrading Newry wastewater treatment works. This project will represent a significant investment in Newry and provide additional capacity to the sewer network to protect the environment and enable economic development. Currently, NI Water estimates that over £100 million of capital investment is required to upgrade Newry wastewater treatment works to the required standard. NI Water had planned to commence the upgrade to the wastewater system in the PC21 investment cycle from 21 to 27 and is currently prioritising its capital investment programme in line with this year's capital budget allocation. My department has, as the member will be aware, operating in a very difficult financial environment for a number of years due to continued underfunding and austerity by successive British governments. I will continue to work with executive colleagues to ensure appropriate investment for NI Water is achieved.
Thank the Minister for his answer. The Minister will be aware that the water and wastewater infrastructure is increasingly becoming a barrier to both housing and commercial development in Newry. Does the Minister recognise that inadequately addressing these issues will impede the success of projects to develop and enhance Newry City Centre and to increase the housing supply? And can he outline what engagement he has had with developers regarding such projects?
Sir.
I haven't had any direct engagement with developers in regard specifically Newry Town Centre. I had the opportunity recently to meet with Newry Chamber of Commerce, which was a very useful and informative discussion with a cross-sectoral group of businesses and interests in the Newry area, and they did highlight their concerns about wastewater infrastructure in the Newry area. I would encourage everyone to engage with NI Water if they have planned developments at the earliest stage possible, but I can assure the member that I'm working on a three-pronged strategy. I'm working with my executive colleagues around securing further funding for NI Water. I'm brought forward proposals to the executive which have been accepted in relation to the sustainable drainage programme, and I'm looking at how we can introduce developer contributions, all of which I believe will assist us in ensuring that we continue to move forward with developments, whether it's in Newry or elsewhere.
Cathal Boyle.
Could I ask the Minister what policy measures is he implementing to help mitigate the impact of surface water going forward in the future?
Minister.
One of the, as I mentioned to Mr McNulty, a key piece of policy that has been passed by the executive and will allow me to bring forward legislation to the House is in relation to sustainable urban drainage. And I think that is an exciting way forward in terms of how we hold surface water and rainfall in certain areas and release it slower into the system, which means that the wastewater infrastructure system is not overpowered with stormwater or rainwater.
Ciara Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 2.
The first residence parking scheme in Rugby Road and College Park Avenue in Belfast came into operation in April 2018. My department has completed a review of this scheme on our wider approach to residence parking. I am content with the findings of the report and have asked officials to arrange for the report to be shared with the Infrastructure Committee and then for it to be published. I can say that the review has found that the scheme introduced at Rugby Road, Belfast has been generally well received among the residents of the area. However, the review also highlights that other such schemes have been difficult to implement, and the Rugby Road is the first and only scheme that has been able to be implemented since the policy was introduced in 2007. The review also highlights the resource-intensive nature of the scheme implementation, which is particularly important given the significant constraints on my budget at this time. The report concludes that a more streamlined approach to delivery is required and that a strategic approach to parking, including residence parking schemes, needs to be developed. This needs to be linked with the local parking strategies that are being developed in support of the new proposed transport plans.
Mrs Ferguson.
Thank you to the Minister for your answer thus far. Can the Minister provide an update on the resident parking schemes in Derry, please? Thank you.
Thank you. My department is aware of the parking difficulties caused by commuter parking in the Bogside area in Derry. In 2011, work started on the development of a potential residence parking scheme for the Bogside area in Derry. This scheme is known as the Rosswell Street Residence Parking Scheme and was to cover an area of the city centre comprised of around 650 dwellings. However, when it was consulted on, there was a high level of opposition to the proposal, as we received 212 objections out of 226 responses. Similar to the Rugby Road scheme, the consultation process involved a substantial staff resource. As a result, consideration has now been given to developing a much smaller scheme in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers and look forward to reading the long-awaited report on Rugby Road, because the development of any residence parking scheme across the north has been contingent on the publication of that review. My Foyle colleague has mentioned the Bogside parking scheme in Derry. Is the Minister aware that other parking schemes in Derry have been delayed even further and are contingent on the success of a Bogside scheme? And would he commit to looking at these issues in parallel?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. As the member rightly says, now that this long-awaited report is going to be published and the opportunity for the committee also to see it, that does set out the pathway forward in terms of how we will deliver future parking schemes, whether it's in Derry or elsewhere. While I'm keen to move forward with as many schemes as possible, there's always the challenge of resources, and that is in terms of people and availability of people in my department to manage these schemes. And there will also be the challenges where residents may or may not wish to proceed on the basis of which the scheme now outlines. So there is a number of steps to be taken in each vicinity, but I'm happy to work through them and where we can deliver as many schemes as possible.
Keith Buchanan.
Minister, with respect to parking schemes, maybe just a question with respect to, are you aware of any individual companies that are privately managed and privately run? The tactics they use to get basically money out of people. There's several parking places in Cookstown where you drive into, there's no signage or signage very, very small, and you'll find £100 within a two-hour stay. And then the debt recovery agency, the tactics they use to get money out of frightened people. Are you aware of that, or is there anything your department can do to at least control that or discuss that in any way?
Minister.
I'm aware of it. I'm aware of the practice as a constituency MLA. It doesn't fall under the direct remit of my department, but I'm more than happy to go back and inquire of my departmental officials as to what, if any, role we can play in that part, because it is vitally important that drivers and those who are using these are treated fairly and equitably under the law.
Peter McReynolds. Minister.
I recognise the current wastewater capacity challenges, and I am taking a three-pronged approach to this matter. Firstly, I continue to work with my executive colleagues to ensure appropriate investment for NI Water. Secondly, I'm bringing forward new legislation in relation to sustainable urban drainage, which will help store stormwater so that it releases slower into the wastewater network. Thirdly, I've asked my officials to examine the legislative change required to bring forward developer contributions. The impact of developer contributions will be fully assessed through the stakeholder engagement and consultation. In the meantime, it encourages developers to engage early with NI Water through its pre-development inquiry process to identify solutions where they exist.
Mr McReynolds.
Minister, what do you say to those who have raised concerns with me recently that they fear developer contributions to address our wastewater system capacity risks creating a two-tier system for development and passing costs onto house buyers?
As I said in my answer, this will require legislative change, and part of that legislative change there will be a consultation process where views can be heard and taken on board, whether it's from the point of view of the developer, the house purchaser, or maybe wherever it may be. And the legislation will have to be voted on through the House. So there is a number of steps to be taken and accountability measures built into those steps before any final decisions are made.
Danny Baker.
And thank the Minister for his answers thus far. What are the current obstacles in preventing developers contributing financially to NI Water in order to facilitate development?
The current obstacles are legislation. The legislation we have available to us won't allow us to take contributions off developers to pay directly towards wastewater treatment works. We can, and is common practice, where developers will pay for the separation of stormwater and sewage and foul waste, but at the moment we cannot allow for contributions to be taken off developers for this purpose.
Deborah Erskine.
Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers so far. Developers are saying that they already contribute, and what we actually have in Northern Ireland is a number of unadopted sites, and yet developers have contributed in some way. Is the Minister working on any elements to try and combat this?
Minister.
The member will be aware that developers pay a bond towards roads and other public services maintenance in an area, but those, before any bond is used to complete a site, I think it's only right and proper that my officials explore to the zenith degree why a developer cannot do it themselves, because the bond in itself is very rarely sufficient to complete the site. So I think it's only right and proper that when we do come into these challenges, that my officials engage with the developer and challenge them to complete the site rather than dipping into the public purse.
Batsy McGlone.
Minister, have you engaged with the Minister for Communities regarding the cost consequences of this proposal and its potential negative cost impact on the provision of social housing?
Minister.
I haven't directly engaged with the Communities Minister at this stage, but as I said to one of your colleagues, we are at the start of this process rather than at the end of this process. It will require legislative change, and as part of any legislative journey, consultation takes place, both with fellow ministers, the general public and other key stakeholders.
Questions 4 and 5 have been withdrawn. I call Michelle Brownlee. Minister.
My department has been operating in a difficult financial environment for a number of years due to underfunding and austerity by successive British governments. As a consequence, new maintenance regimes have been adopted commensurate to the levels of funding available to my department. This ultimately determines the frequency at which departmental maintenance activities will be undertaken. This also means that only the highest priority defects are repaired so that the budget can cover the entire year. Resurfacing schemes are funded through my department's structural maintenance programme. Regrettably, for some time, the available investment has not kept pace with what is required, and we have not been able to keep all roads in the reasonable condition we would wish. While there are many roads that would benefit from investment, due to a limited resources budget, resurfacing work is taken forward through the prioritisation of those deemed most in need for intervention. Resurfacing schemes completed within the previous financial year and resurfacing schemes programmed for the current financial year will both be listed within my department's 24-25 annual report to Council in due course.
Ms Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was actually only yesterday I got an email from the department in relation to the lack of budget for dropped curbs. It's asked you, Minister, in terms of priorities within the department for people with disabilities or those using prams to have a safe crossing point. How is the department prioritising that, and how will we see that reflected in investment within East Antrim?
The member raises a very good point in terms of ensuring that my department is using its budget to ensure there's accessibility and inclusion for all citizens in our society, and it's one of the key areas I'm bringing forward within my department, so I can assure the member I'm acutely aware of the need to prioritise budgets in a way which are inclusive.
Declan Kearney.
Minister, I welcome the efforts of your own department to address structural maintenance priorities within my own constituency of South Antrim, particularly in a number of rural locations. However, I remain deeply concerned about the defects in the structural maintenance programme, not only in South Antrim but across the north more generally. So could you set out for us to what extent is British government underfunding and austerity having a direct immediate impact upon your structural maintenance programme?
Minister. Thank the member for his question. Members will have noted, and I've no doubt we'll move on at some stage to the roadworks going on around Belfast, but members will have noted that there has been an increased activity on the ground from both DFI staff and contractors in relation to repairing, renewing and correcting defects across the network. And I welcome that continued effort and investment, but however, it's quite simply the case that after over a decade of austerity, that my department and indeed other executive departments simply can't keep a pace of the challenges they face, and therefore we have to prioritise more rigidly than we previously would have in terms of how we deliver schemes. But I can assure the member that I'm looking at every option available to me to get more works carried out on the ground, for more investment, particularly in our rural network, where quite rightly and often rural people feel they've been left behind. I intend to, where I can, correct that and ensure that rural roads are maintained in a way which is appropriate to them.
Donny Donnelly.
The Minister has mentioned issues with structural maintenance across road network. I would like to ask the Minister for a bit more detail on his proposals to ensure that the quality of roads are safe for all users, specifically cyclists.
Minister.
Yes, well, it's quite clear that we have to provide a good surface for all road users, and it's often, I suppose that's categorised as simply as motorists, but it has to be right and proper that we're providing a surface for all road users, whether they be motorists, motorcyclists, pedestrians, or in this case cyclists, and I endeavour to do that within the budget available to me.
Stuart Dixon.
Question number 7, Minister.
Sir.
Major road schemes are an important part of the work that is delivered by my department as we seek to reduce journey times, increase reliability and improve road safety. In October 2022, I published a placemaking and active travel review report on the scheme and asked my officials to carry out further work on 3 scenarios were recommended within it. The work to prepare a placemaking and active travel development report has now been completed. Due to the underinvestment in major road schemes and a constrained budget position, the scheme was considered as part of the prioritisation of major schemes, and further works was paused as part of the outworking of that review. I met with officials on the 9th of October 2024 to review the report, and this will allow me to consider the way forward for the scheme. Any subsequent decision to proceed with the York Street Interchange project can only be made when I am confident that there is budget certainty for the scheme and its delivery is in line with my department's emerging transport plans.
Mr. Dixon.
And thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, do you accept that the delay to progress this project causes serious environmental issues at various bottlenecks, economic delays, particularly for constituents in East Antrim, and also restricts the future and enhanced use of the Belfast-Derry railway line, the Belfast-Larne railway line, and the potential for the use of a Belfast International Airport railway connection?
Minister.
I accept that the current status quo is far from ideal, and we do need to make a significant investment in the York Street area, and that we need to move forward with a project that not only benefits those commuters who travel through the area, but also those communities who live and do business in the area as well, hence the reason for the placemaking report. I am studying how I move forward with a number of major road projects, and I keep coming back to the question as to how I'm going to finance them. That's the part of the equation we're missing. The outcome of the budget statement from the Chancellor of the Exchequer may shed some light on options for the Executive, but until there is new options available to me, then it is very restrictive on what further projects I can deliver.
Arthur Till.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, clearly there are big projects that need to happen, but I do want to touch on 2 projects that are happening. That's the maintenance at Sydenham Bypass and Grand Central and all the disruption associated with that. I support both those things happening. I'm clearly a huge supporter of Grand Central, but obviously there's a risk that this entire city grinds to a halt. So what are you doing to ensure the best possible level of information to people who are using public transport? I tried to get on a bus the other day near my constituency office in Botanic Avenue. It said there were no buses running. A bus showed up 10 minutes later. We need proper information to commuters, people who are in the city and coming in. So what are you actually doing to minimise that disruption?
Minister.
Well, I'll remind members that I think it was as early as April, May time, I provided them with a written statement outlining the challenges that Belfast would face as a result of the works necessary to be carried out as part of the public realms work of Belfast Grand Central Station. So members have been briefed on this from that time. So what am I doing? Okay, we have now bringing forward measures to allow taxis into the bus lanes, which I think will free up some commuter travel in the area. I've asked my officials to engage with Belfast City Council directly to see what measures we can jointly take together to inform citizens and promote Belfast moving forward. I have also asked officials to respond to the request from Retail ANI and Hospitality Ulster in regards to them seeking a further extension of the moratorium around roadworks around Christmas time. I've asked my officials to see, can we do that? Is that an option? If it is an option, then let's do it to support traders moving forward. But we're in danger of sending out a message that Belfast is closed for business. It's not. Belfast is extremely busy, which is a great thing. My responsibility is to make sure that we can get commuters in and out of the city in an effective and efficient manner. The investment we're making in Sydenham Bypass will do that. The investment we're making in Belfast Grand Central Station will do that. And other measures, including the Eastern Transport Plan, which is an over-encompassing plan around Belfast, will also do that as well.
Harry Harvey.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr.
As Minister responsible for promoting and improving road safety, I want to actively with partners to reduce death and serious injuries on our roads. Following the adjournment debate on the 12th of March 2024, I asked my officials to take forward a review of the A20 Portaferry Road from Newton Arch to Teal Rocks to establish if engineering measures could be taken forward to enhance road safety. I'm pleased to advise nearly 1 kilometre of resurfacing from Newton Arch to just beyond Teal Rocks has recently been completed. This scheme has included a new bus lay-by, bus shelter and footway provision opposite Strangford filling station, as well as a crossing point for pedestrians, providing a safer facility for vulnerable road users to access public transport. A localised section of footway at the Newton Arch side will also be widened. This resurfacing scheme has provided a better road surface as well as refreshed road markings to aid driver visibility. The road surfacing is part of a wider 10-year plan for road resurfacing along the A20 Portaferry Road. Regarding the existing speed limit, my officials are currently reviewing a recently completed traffic assessment on the extension of the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit from Newton Arch to just beyond Teal Rocks. It is hoped that this review will be completed over the coming weeks. A 320-metre footway is also being considered near Cunningham Road to provide a continuous footway between Newton Arch and Grey Abbey. Following the release of the latest PSNI collision data, my officials will also assess the Portaferry Road to identify any common causation patterns that could be addressed by engineering measures. Thank you.
Mr. Harvey.
Thank the Minister for his answers thus far, and I look forward to the results of that assessment on the 40-mile-an-hour extension. Minister, in light of the recent road accident involving the bus with children from Strangford College, could you reassure families that your department is working to maximise safety on these rural links? Thank you.
Minister.
Yes, and my thoughts go out to all those who were involved in that accident, and thankfully there were not more serious injuries than did occur, and everyone will have a full recovery from that incident. I can assure the member that road safety is the priority for my department, and we will be fully cooperating with the police investigation into that incident and helping them understand how that came about.
Kelly Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. And can I just say, after Storm Ashley, can I thank you and your department for the quick clean-up of the seaweed and all the mess that was thrown onto the A20. Minister, I'm very welcome of the road improvements that have been made near Teal Rocks. It's something that has been long awaited for because it is a black spot area. But I was just wondering, there has been the removal of shell grip from the road on that area. Can the Minister explain why, with the resurfacing, that the shell grip has been removed? Because that's the area that has had the most crashes recently.
Minister.
Firstly, can I add to your thanks for all the staff who were working over the weekend dealing with Storm Ashley, and commend them on their work, whether they were working in the background in terms of information going out to the public or those who were actually on the ground clearing up while and after the storm had passed. I'm not aware of the reason as to why the grip surface has been removed, but I will ask officials to respond to you directly.
Alan Robinson. Minister.
Our preferred route for the Ballykelly bypass was announced in 2010. However, in advance of any decision to prioritise this scheme, officials would need to undertake a reassessment of the route due to passage of time. The estimate for the bypass compiled back in 2008 was in the range of 35 to 40 million. Again, this would need to be brought up to date and would be subject to high levels of inflation, cost increases experienced by the construction sector in recent years. My department is in the process of developing a new transport strategy that will help to shape the vision and strategic priorities for transport through to 2035. Once this is published, it will help inform the transport plan for the regional strategic transport network, which includes the A2 at Ballykelly.
Mr. Robinson.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response. Minister, you'll be aware that there has been 3 roads schemes on that route over the past few years, which have caused a lot of delays and detours. Given that it is 16 years since I attended the public consultation on the proposed A2 Ballykelly bypass, at a time in which 16,000 vehicles per day were travelling through Ballykelly, when will your department be turning your attention to that bypass, and when will we see the much-awaited regional transport plan?
Minister.
Both answers are I suppose, the same answer to both questions, in the sense that the transport plan will decide as to whether there is still a required bypass around Ballykelly. Can't give you a firm date as to when that transport will be delivered. A transport plan will be delivered, but we are working our way through them. They are quite staff intensive. There's a lot of data has to be collected, a lot of consultation also has to be involved in that. But the transport plans will bring us forward a definitive way forward, not only for Ballykelly but for many other towns and villages, indeed cities across the region.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, and I share the comments of my constituency colleague. Many people in Ballykelly are quite frustrated at the ongoing scheme and would like to have seen the investment into a bypass. Appreciate it's probably significantly more. But will the Minister commit to coming to Ballykelly and seeing the work that needs to be done and why people are advocating for this?
Minister.
If the member wishes to write to my private office, I'll take the invite under consideration and respond in due course. Look, regardless of where roadworks are taking place, I can understand the frustration of commuters when they're caught up in them, etc. But they will see the benefits of those roadworks once they're complete. Not only the roadworks, but the associated active travel route, which I think will be hugely beneficial to the people of Ballykelly.
Neil Ennis.
Question 10.
Minister.
Apologies. On the 10th of October 2024, I announced a bilingual traffic sign pilot for the Gaeltacht quarter in West Belfast. This pilot will install bilingual traffic signs and road markings on the Falls Road between Springfield Road and White Rock Road. The majority of signs and markings relate to bus lanes, with the remainder being of mixed parking and direction signs. The Gaeltacht quarter is an ideal location for this pilot, and the provision of the traffic signs and road markings in both Irish and English will complement the use of these languages by other businesses and organisations in the Gaeltacht quarter.
Ms. Ennis.
And I thank the Minister for her response, and I welcome the pilot scheme in the Gaeltacht quarter. Does the Minister agree that the Irish language should be more visible across all areas of our public sector?
Minister.
I do agree, particularly when you look at the Belfast Gaeltacht quarter. It has a thriving Irish language community. It is used and visual, and I think it's only right and proper that government departments such as mine support and promote it in line with the work that's going on by even many in the voluntary or business sector.
Keith Buchanan.
Question 11, please.
Minister.
The computer can't keep up with you. Oh, okay. I met with the Minister Nesbitt and Minister Muir on the 9th of September to discuss the cross-departmental working group on community transport, which I established in my previous tenure as Minister. We collectively agreed the group will look to consider whether transport in the community can provide a more cost-effective, value-for-money service delivery model to meet the needs of users, and investigate the potential for community transport providers to be part of a collaborative group of transport options and pathways that can be accessed by the population.
Mr. Buchanan.
Good answer so far. Minister, we all know rural community transport does a vital work and obviously pick up places that general public transport doesn't. But on some information I received from the Northern Trust, Minister, the private money they spend towards taxis and some, to be fair, private ambulances in 23-24 is £2.3 million. There has to be some degree of savings across all the trusts that can get the community transport to make this more beneficial to the public purse.
Minister.
One of the reasons why we've set up the working group and tasked officials is to interrogate questions such as that. In terms of, on the face of it, you would imagine, yes, there is opportunities there for community transport, there are savings that could be achieved, and indeed an investment in community transport is investment in your local community. But we want officials to investigate that and to engage with community transport and others to see what is the most practical way community transport can support other departments in the delivery of their services.
Moving on to topical questions, the Minister for Infrastructure, Cara Hunter's question is withdrawn. I call David Honeyford.
Mr Speaker, other neighbouring local towns of Banbridge and Portadown have an hours free on-street parking. Belfast is on-street parking paid for 2 to 4 years, for 2 to 4 hours. Lisburn's traders are disadvantaged when compared to other neighbouring shopping areas. Will the Minister commit to reviewing on-street parking in Lisburn?
A controlled parking zone was introduced in Lisburn in 2008 following an approach from the Council to review the on-street car parking arrangements in the city. Controlled parking zones aim to manage demand in an appropriate way, deterring all-day parking and facilitating improved customer access to businesses by encouraging the ongoing turnover of parking spaces. As the member will be acutely aware, the current tariff for on-street parking in Lisburn within the controlled parking zone is £1 per hour. 3 traffic attendants currently deployed Monday to Saturday between 8 and 1800. So there was a rationale for the introduction of the original scheme with an engagement with the Council. We are moving towards, as part of the transport plans, part of that is also in terms of how we manage our parking moving forward in an era where we're trying to reduce carbon emissions, etc., etc. And I will certainly engage with my officials to see if we can fit the review the member refers to into what's currently going on, and if not, then how we move the situation on in relation to Lisburn and Uri. But I think it'll also have to be done in conjunction with the local councils as well.
Mr. Honeyford.
I thank the Minister for looking into and addressing this issue. It comes down to having the worst of both worlds, but I would ask what proposals he will bring forward to address the issue, even if that's into the new year, if he can bring to help even the playing field for Lisburn traders.
Minister.
As I said to the member, we are reviewing parking as part of the transport plans moving forward. If the terms of reference of that, to my mind, don't cover the concerns the member has, then we may need to do a separate review into Lisburn on its own. And I've no doubt some of my Newry colleagues will stand up and say, well, what about Newry? But let's see if what we currently have in play is fit for purpose. If not, then I commit to the member to reviewing that.
Mr. Gillian, I'm not sure you're doing the hokey cookie there, but you're next up anyway.
Minister, can you provide us with an update on the Enniskillen bypass, Lidhall?
The Enniskillen bypass is proceeding due to the commitment of the Executive, it has to be said, to this bypass, even though it is part of the Mid-South West regional deals and city deals, which the British Government have withdrawn from, but I can assure the member that the Executive has committed to it and it is going ahead.
Mr. McGilvray.
And can I ask the Minister, does he agree that the British Government should stop their hokey cokey around the Mid-South West and the Causeway Coast and Glens and allow other vital infrastructure projects to proceed?
Minister.
Yes, I'll avoid getting into the rhythm of the dance move. But yes, the British Government should immediately lift their embargo on these deals. It's causing uncertainty, and anything to do with uncertainty, as a member will know, is bad for business, bad for investment, and bad for councils and the Executive planning the way forward. So those embargoes should be immediately lifted.
Ross Bradley.
Speaker, Minister, it's often heard in this place, as has been alluded to already today, that lack of infrastructure is a major impediment to house building across Northern Ireland. Can the Minister detail what constituencies fall into this category?
Minister.
Please don't say them all.
Well, it's all constituencies, but there is towns and villages within those constituencies which may be impacted to a greater or lesser degree. But it's important to send out this message. We are open for business. I would encourage developers to engage at as early as possible a stage with NI Water, who have set up a unit specifically for this purpose, to speak to developers about their proposals moving forward. So Yes, there are challenges facing NI Water, as there are with every other public service we operate, but there are also continued opportunities for investment and development across all constituencies.
Mr Bradley.
Thank the Minister for his response there, but can I ask the Minister to supply a detailed strategy of how his department will identify constituencies under pressure in regards to sewage, water and wastewater, and how they intend to prioritise work going forward?
Minister.
The work the member calls for is actually undertaken by NI Water, who can provide, and I'll ask for that information to be provided to the member. The strategy moving forward in terms of how we deliver, there's over £500 million of public funds being given to NI Water this year. That's going to be invested across a range of areas, including wastewater treatment and the delivery of fresh water to all our homes. They also tell me that they can connect up to 18,000 properties through various measures, including where developers can separate foul water from rainwater. And part of the PC21 development plan this year allows NI Water to connect up to 4,500 properties to the system as well. So, yes, there are challenges, but we're open for business.
Danny Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister that given the daily traffic congestion in the Larne West area in Larne, particularly on Donaghy's Lane and the Ballyhampton Road, where there's hundreds of houses and ongoing development, just what the Minister is doing to improve the flow of traffic in this area.
I'm not specifically aware of the area, though I'm tempted to say that there's traffic jams outside Belfast, which was interesting to hear. In terms of any new developments moving forward, the local division will respond to planning applications and will respond on the basis as to whether the road network can take additional traffic as a result of further development, or cannot take further roads or further commuter traffic. But they may suggest that a developer can contribute to the local road network to allow progress to be made. So I'm not specifically aware of the area the member refers to, but I will come back to him with more detail if he so wishes.
Mr Donnelly.
Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for that answer. As the Minister isn't aware, I'd be very pleased if the Minister would commit to a visit just to see in this. There's a very specific issue in this area where a solution to alleviate the congestion could become apparent, and it would be great for people in the area to alleviate this congestion. Thank you.
Minister.
As I said to a previous member, if the member chooses to write to my private office, I'll take the invite under consideration.
Brian Kingston.
Speaker, and turning to the issue of traffic disruption and congestion resulting from the closure of Durham Street in Belfast, which we're told will last around a year. That congestion is not helped by the closure of the left-hand turn from Great Victoria Street onto Grosvenor Road beside the Fitzwilliam Hotel. Can the Minister confirm, is that a permanent change? And I know there's an explanation given about widening the footpath, but to have done that work at the same time as Durham Street was closed greatly reduced any option for traffic coming from the Grosvenor Road in the South Belfast direction, either to or from.
Minister.
I'm sorry I can't confirm to the member whether it's a permanent closure or not, but I will give him that information. We're trying to, or the plan is to get as much of the public realms works completed around Grand Central Station as quickly as possible. At the end of this, then, there's no further traffic congestion, and the public and businesses and visitors to Belfast have a public realm scheme that everybody can be proud of and will attract visitors to the city.
Mr Kingston.
Everyone welcomes that investment and the excellent new central station, and many of us have had the opportunity to visit it. But just particularly during the closure of Durham Street, I hope that the Minister and the Department will look at, are there any temporary measures that could be introduced to enable traffic flow? Because I think anyone coming from the South Belfast direction on Great Victoria Street trying to get to the West Link, or likewise on Grosvenor Road trying to go in a South Belfast direction, faces a very difficult journey. I'd hope that the Minister will look, can any temporary measures be introduced?
Minister.
I can assure the member that is the case. While back as far as May or April, we did notify the Assembly members that there was going to be significant disruption in Belfast City Centre. We've also undertaken to keep that under review, and where lessons can be learned from as the work is ongoing, and where we can alleviate traffic congestion, ahead of schedule or do it a different way, then I can assure the member we will do that.
That's Ian.
Could the Minister outline the benefit of allowing taxis to use the bus lanes while the public realm works are being carried out at Grand Central Station?
To alleviate some of the disruption and to support the taxi industry, I'm bringing forward proposals which will permit Class A and Class C taxis to use certain bus lanes in the vicinity of the works. The member will be aware the taxi industry provides an important service within our community, ensuring people, including the most vulnerable in society, have door-to-door access to work, education, socialising and medical appointments. Tourists also use the service, and it will also be used to bring people to the station for connection to public transport.
Mr. Sheehan.
Would the Minister agree that these public realm works, when they're completed, will be transformational for those who live in Belfast, those who work in Belfast, and anyone who visits Belfast?
Minister.
I think without a doubt, and when I say I understand the frustration of commuters and indeed businesses around the disruption, which is significant. The outworkings and the completion of this work is also going to be significant and ground changing for Belfast, and will see Belfast having a state-of-the-art transport hub with fantastic public realms works around it and an attractive asset to the city.
Honourable McMurray.
Thank you to the Minister. As we're approaching a year anniversary of the flooding in Newcastle, how can the Minister, or will the Minister, reassure residents that agencies within his department are working together in a coordinated fashion to prevent future surface flooding incidents?
Minister.
The member will be aware of the review that was carried out in relation to the flooding in that area and the lessons to be learned from the responses of agencies to the flooding and how we react in the future moving forward. I think one of the most immediate actions we can take is to continue to develop the local community and how we support the local community to be a resilient group, and where we can have sandbags and other measures in place available to whether it's local businesses or local community groups to distribute quicker, I think is an important step forward. But the lessons learned from last year are being worked through and will be learned from.
Mr. McMurray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister. And he is quite right to pay tribute to the local flood resilience groups, but I'm just wondering as well how that communication will be made to said groups and how they will be enabled to build upon their capacity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister. My department is working with the local council and others in terms of supporting those fledgling resilience groups in some instances to ensure that they have the information required. The information will be shared in the usual manner, whether it's through text or email alert as well, but full information will be given to them groups as to how they play their role in responding to flooding incidents.
McGuigan.
Can I ask the Minister to provide his assessment of how crucial he believes the uptake of zero-emission vehicles are to combating climate change?
Minister.
We passed important legislation in this House last week to allow an amendment order to go through Westminster in early new year in relation to zero-emission vehicles and setting quotas for new sales of those vehicles. In terms of tackling climate change and decarbonising the transport sector, zero-emission vehicles are crucial in that plan and way forward, and it's a main part of the main thrust of my department's decarbonisation policy in relation to transport.
Mr. McGuigan.
Thank the Minister for that response, and obviously charging points are crucial in determining more uptake on zero-emission vehicles. Can I further ask the Minister then, is he confident that zero-emission vehicles trading scheme will result in more charging points being installed?
Yes, and we have seen a significant growth in relation to the installation of charging points by the private commercial sector. And I think now that the private commercial sector have been given the confidence that we are moving towards zero-emission vehicles and we are part of that mandate moving forward, then they will have the confidence to invest in charging points moving forward.
Time is up for questions to the Minister for Infrastructure. We are now going to move back to the RHI discussion, and if members would take their ease for a moment.